What's up, everybody? Geoff Cooper here. Welcome back to Blue Collar Heathen on YouTube. And today, not doing a response video at all. Nope. Taking a break from that. Got a little something I want to get off my chest while it's still relevant. Should we tax the churches? Let's get this done. Today we're going to be talking about taxing the churches. Should it be done? Are there other ideas? Is there something else that could be done? Now, before we really get started, I think it's probably necessary just to clarify that I'm an American, if you couldn't already tell. You know, if the accent, idiodialect, and attitude kind of gave it away. There isn't an apology for that forthcoming. You're thinking of the Canadians. They sound like us a little bit, but their vowels tend to be a little rounder, you know? In the US, the waistlines tend to be a little rounder. Go figure. So this video is going to get into the notion of taxing religious institutions in the United States as a source of revenue for the federal, state, and local governments. People that advocate for this idea rightly say that it would be potentially billions of dollars infused into the treasury coffers and could theoretically significantly decrease the tax burden borne by the individual taxpayers. This stance has been gaining ground on the internet lately. Increased screen time might have something to do with the rise of the religiously unaffiliated in the United States over the recent years. Now, quite recently, there has been a graphic going around showing where the religiously unaffiliated are in comparison to other religions. If you haven't seen that graphic, I'm going to put it here, and I'll put a link to it down below. Now, while we have this up, I really want you to give this some serious consideration here. Look at that graph. Those with no specific religious affiliation, though they're not necessarily atheist, though that'll count in there as well, these guys outnumber the Jewish, the mainline Protestant, evangelical Protestant, Catholics, and every other religious affiliation in the United States. I will now pause and let this sink in as we go to a brief musical interlude, whereupon I shall express my feelings on this graph in interpretive dance. I've heard people muse about the idea of taxing churches since I first became aware about the principles of taxation. Somewhere would have been like a junior high school civics class. It's only been in like the last 10 years or so that I've really heard people give it like some serious consideration. In the last 2 or 3, it's really been gaining ground. A hell of a lot more lately with all the negative press that the church receives. Like every time the church fucks up, a church fucks up. The most recent one probably comes in part due to the document released in my home state of Pennsylvania, where it outlines 70 years of systematic child rape by the Catholic Church and the organized protection of criminal clergy by their criminally culpable overlords in the upper echelons of the Catholic hierarchy. Now, once I was among those calling for church taxation, I recognized that the infusion of that kind of revenue could have a serious impact, a positive impact, on the individual taxpayer. And I thought that was just a swell idea. I want it to be clear that I no longer hold this position. I do not think that the churches should be taxed. I have some other ideas on the subject, and I'd ask that you just hear me out. Now, we all know that religion is big business in the U.S. I mean, it's huge. We know that. And the proponents of the idea rightly say it would be billions of dollars. There's no doubt about that. I'm not arguing that at all. Where I come from is recognizing that taxing the religious institutions would create a religious industry sector in the United States. This sector would be dependent upon having parishioners or, congregates go to these religious institutions, right, and keep donating money to them. That's where the revenue will come from, right? That's how you're going to tax the churches, from that kind of revenue, right? That's how they get their money. But if they're incorporated and recognized as an institution, I, as an atheist, am working to decrease religiosity in this country overall. I don't want to set up any type of industrialized, religious sector, economic sector that would be valuable to the U.S. government, and actively try to work against that. That would make my job as an atheist harder, I think. Not to mention, when an industry starts failing in this country, like every time an industry as a collective starts going belly up, it's become fashionable in the last 50, 60 years for the federal government to infuse billions of dollars into that industry as a government bailout. Can you imagine how hostile somebody like me would be? Like in the year 2034, we had to hear some bullshit like, the sitting president is expected to urge Congress this afternoon to give the Southern Baptists Incorporated $17.4 billion in federal funding to help keep their doors open after they have seen significant decreases in membership over the last 7 years. I'd go frickin' postal. Wouldn't you? Like, I would go legit nuts hearing that. That isn't the future I want. And I'm not going to sit here and start working against myself. I don't think taxing them is a good idea. And I think in the long run, taxing them would give them too much wiggle room, too much legitimacy. Taxes are for legit businesses. And I don't view religious institutions as legit businesses. I just don't. Considering the Catholic Church and all of the scam churches that do the faith healing and all that, I liken them more to criminal organizations. Now, legit businesses are taxed, but criminals are fined. And that's where I think might explore means of extracting income from them. If I could write the books, right? This is a hypothetical, right? Not necessarily advocating for this, because I don't think it would happen in my lifetime, but if I could write the books, when I become president, never going to happen. But if I could write the books, I'd hold them criminally culpable for their actions and for the things that they say. For each demonstrably incorrect thing that they say, levy a fine against them. You can even put it on a sliding scale by how egregious it is and the number of people that it was said to and what kind of impact that church has, right? So this way the televangelists would, because they have a much broader audience, right, would be fined much more severely than your local, your local yokel church on, Sunday morning with the, it serves, 175 people or whatever. So fine them for each demonstrably incorrect thing they say. And fine them much more severely for things that they say that violate human rights or call for the subjugation of or maltreatment of other people or discrimination against certain types of people or anything like that. Those fines should be more severe. So yeah, I'm saying fine them for the things that they say and the things that they do. If they engage in faith healing, Find the shit out of these guys. Find those guys' doors closed. When they start speaking of the prosperity gospels and all that kind of horse shit, find the fucking hell out of those guys. Because that's freaking harmful to people. And they need to be culpable in some way for that. Even the small churches, they need to be accountable for what they say. So when they start talking about the Genesis or their creation myths, they either should have to specify that this is not to be taken as literally true. And if they do present it as something to be taken as literally true or actual natural history, they need to be fined. So I say fine them for Genesis. Fine them for the Sodom and Gomorrah. You can fine them for Noah's Ark. You can fine them for the Exodus story in its entirety. Fine them for the resurrection. Fine them for the miracles, the raising of Lazarus, the feeding of the masses with the loaves and fishes. They need to be fined for these things. And when they preach doctrine that is harmful to other people, that has to come with severe penalties. When they teach a child that their friends and classmates are going to burn forever because they don't worship the same way that they do, that is abuse. That is harmful. That needs to carry a severe fine. When they teach that homosexuals are abominations that should be stoned or killed, you need to fine the living dog shit out of these people. So I don't say tax their doors closed. I say fine their doors closed. Hold them criminally liable for the things that they say and the doctrines that they preach and the things that they do. If we could find the church's doors closed and then we could take those, sell them off to investors, private investors or companies, doesn't really matter. Turn them into women's healthcare centers and drug and alcohol rehab centers, youth centers, soup kitchens, goth and metal clubs, having next year's acts playing now on the local scene. I think that would be cool. Make them coffee shops, fucking sandpaper emporiums. All would be better from my perspective. Now, I don't think my suggestion is likely to be implemented in my lifetime. Not in this country. But I think it ought to be. I mean, there's a good many out there that would like to shorten my lifetime, just from what I'm saying here. Holding the churches criminally accountable. Now, when I think of that, I have to wonder, do I actually care? Is this something that I actually care about? If some, redneck is going to, sit here and threaten my life. Do I care? This isn't actually a watch. It's a give-a-fuckometer. And I'm getting a reading of -9. It's working perfectly. That's all we got for this time. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'd like to hear what you think should be done with the churches. Should we find them? Do you think that that's going to help us in the long run? Or do you have another idea? If you have another idea, leave it down in the comments below. I'd love to see what it is. Anyways, before we get going, and by we I mean me, before I get going, just wanted to remind you, I'm going to be appearing on Deconversion Stories with Neil, the 604 Atheist. Neil's channel is a hell of a lot of fun. I've been on there for a few of the stories that he's had, and I always enjoy not only watching the interview with who he has on, but also participating in the live chat and the after party. And that's generally how it goes. when I'm on there, which will be Monday, the 6th of May at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, Neil will interview me for an hour, and then after that, there'll be an after party where we'll hang out, and it'll be like just a group participation. So if you can, go ahead and subscribe to Neil's channel now. I would also recommend that you ring the bell for his channel now, because this Saturday, the 4th of May, he's going to have R and Raw on, and that is not going to be an episode you're going to want to miss. I may have to, because I'm working a 24 that day, so I'll technically be on the clock, but I'll try to be there as much as I can. So, see you guys then. Thanks so much for sticking around. Take it easy.